Hello, everyone. I'm Johnnie Alexander. Welcome to Novelists Unwind. We're here today with Sarah Sundin, who several years ago just rejuvenated the World War II genre and has really made a name for herself writing stories of heroes and heroines from that era. And it's just so fascinating. So, Sarah, first of all, can you just kind of tell us how you got started and your interest in World War II and a little bit about yourself?
I'm sure I sure didn't come to writing in a normal way. I'm a pharmacist. I was a chemistry major.
That's amazing.
Very unusual.
It's like those are two different sides of the brain, right?
Yeah. It's funny when I talk to young writers and they ask, well, what should I major in to become a writer, an author? It's like, well, do like I do and major in chemistry. That's the traditional path. And yeah, no. On the other hand, my training in science and in healthcare infuses my writing, because I write often my characters, especially my heroes, they're military heroes. Their training is very technical. I need to understand what they do and translate it for my lay reader. So in a way, and I keep having my characters get sick and injured. So training does come in handy.
Sick so you can heal them.
Exactly. When I got into writing, I think God just flipped on a switch in my brain one morning. I woke up from a dream, and this dream was so vivid, and I had to write it down. I've never had anything like that before. And I still had little kids at home. My youngest was still in diapers, and I was walking around all day going, I can't write a book. I can't write a book. I don't know anything about writing books, and argued with myself for a few days. And then finally, the ideas were flowing so fast, I didn't want to lose them because I really loved these characters. So I literally grabbed binder paper, the lined binder paper from my kids' stash and a number 2 pencil and just started writing it freehand and just loved it. And that book will never be published, but it got me started. And
I love that story. And I read on your website, like that was like 18 years ago when that happened. And I think it's so encouraging. And I hear that again and again from the authors that I interview on Novelists Unwind. It's like, it's not a quick journey. It is so, I mean, you are a successful known writer in the CBA world and known for, writing wonderful historical romances. But it was like, 10 years to an overnight success story. Right?
Exactly. Because I had 3 years when I was writing and not showing it to anybody. Mm-hmm. So I did join a critique group, but it took me 3 years to get the nerve up to start submitting to editors and agents. And then I had 5 years of rejection letters. And I actually would not trade those years for anything. As eager as I was to get published and as anxious as I was that I would never get published. And I'm very glad self-publishing was not an option in those days. I would have, and I wasn't ready. Because I was still learning the craft. I was learning industry. I was learning everything that goes in. God was working on my heart. He was teaching me a lot of really important lessons, namely about it's him, not me, in various different ways. And so he needed me to get to a certain point before I could be a published author, because there's certain things that come with being an author that I was not prepared for in 2000 that I wasn't better prepared for in 2010 when my first book released. Wow. So I'm very glad for those preparation years, as difficult as they were. But how often is it in our lives we look back at the most important years of our lives, and those are almost always our most difficult ones.
Yeah, that's true.
Those are the ones that made us grow. So I'm very thankful for those years.
Well, I love that you say that, because I think that's inspiring for aspiring writers or people who are still in that journey and just sometimes wondering, should I give up? Is this really worth it? The time and all this kind of thing. And yet it's like, just keep at it. If that desire is on your heart and God has put that in your heart, because what if you had quit at year 9 or year 8 or not going to conferences and you won Writer of the Year at the Mount Hermon Conference? And I'm sure that was a very affirming, like, yes, I'm on the right track.
That was exciting.
There. Well, again, for those watching, Sarah is an award-winning author. Her novel, Through Waters Deep, I've got it written here, Carol Award finalist, which is very big. 2 of your books have made the book list. I love this, 101 best romances of the last 10 years. That's phenomenal. I mean, to have one book on that list and you've got 2, that's just,
I was blown away.
oh, that's wonderful. And the 2016 INSPI Award. So yeah, that's really cool. How many books have you written now? Like 12, 16? Where are we at?
10 that are published, and then a novella, and 11 is written and is at the publishers, and I'm writing number 12 right now, and I have a contract for 13 through 15.
Oh, well, good for you. Congratulations.
Yeah, really excited.
That is really great. So this is the latest one. It's probably backwards on the thing. The sea before us, the sunrise, Sunrise at Normandy. So this is the first in the Sunrise at Normandy series, correct?
Yes.
And the second one's about to come out then, and then you're writing the third one for this series. I have to ask, because I've got like here's my little bookmark. So I've got like this much to go. I think like 4 or 5 chapters. I've had a delightful day. This is what I've been doing all day long, is reading this book. It's been just fun just to sit and not be doing anything but read, for you don't get to do that very often.
Yeah.
I did start it a few days ago, but it was like today, it was like, oh yes, I really want to get this read. Are books 2 and 3 about Wyatt's brothers? That's my burning question. So Wyatt is the hero in this book, and he's got 2 brothers.
Yeah.
No spoilers, but
no, they're not spoilers. That's actually very clear. And the series is about these 3 brothers because they're estranged. There was a huge tragedy and a ring of betrayal that thrust them apart in 1941, and now we're in 1944, and these 3 brothers are being brought together by D-Day. One is fighting on the sea, one is fighting in the air, and one will be fighting on the land. So
that's what I thought when I got to that part and where they all were, and I thought, okay, and I thought, and this is so genius, because it's like, well, how can I not now read what happens to these other 2 brothers right after hearing and that tragic story, which kudos to you. And again, I don't even want to tell what that was, but I thought, wow, to have something like this happen so close at the beginning of a story. Wow.
When I was telling it to my friends, like, this is a Shakespearean melodrama.
It was a shock. I mean, it really was.
But I needed, well, once I got the idea of having D-Day told from the perspective of 3 brothers fighting in the 3 different aspects of it, but I couldn't make it work if they were talking to each other.
Yeah.
Because then Brother 3's story would be completely laid out in Brother 1's book. And the only way I could make it work was if they were not talking to each other. But I also knew that they were close, so it had to be something really big that broke them apart. And
it was.
And you only have one piece of the puzzle. There's more in Adler's story coming
up. I thought that, for him to have also taken off the way he did. Why?
Yeah. I'm very curious to see how readers will respond to that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, I'm sure they're going to love it. So, again, I remember, the World War II, because I was, my first novel was a World War II novel, and it did just seem like your name was everywhere, and all these wonderful books are coming out, and I was looking at your website, and I love how you've got this question, why World War II? And the 3 words, daring, drama, daring, and romance.
Yeah.
Brilliant ways to answer that. But can you talk to us a little bit about each of those 3 things? Yeah.
Well, coming to the drama, it's just a time of dramatic things happening in the world, and you can't read anything about World War II without seeing the drama, and that helps infuse the quieter parts of the stories, like especially the women's stories, because there is so much drama, everything from rationing to shortages to women serving in new ways. The heroine in The Sea Before Us she's a British heroine, but she's working as a Wren, a naval officer.
Yeah.
The heroine in The Sky Above Us will be a Red Cross worker working overseas. So here's a woman who was teaching elementary school. Now she's working overseas.
Wow.
And in the 3rd book, she's a librarian at an army camp.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow.
So women are trying on all these new roles, and there was just all this, there's upheaval in society, everything from race riots to people, this migration throughout the nation. It was just a very dramatic time.
It is, and I don't know whether it was at that part of the daring, but you talked about the heroism and the courage, and I mean I found that too as I was researching different aspects of World War II, and mine was more about the stealing of the art and the children that were protected, because the statistic is that only 10% of the Jewish children in Eastern occupied Europe survived the war. I mean, it's horrendous.
Yeah.
And most of the ones who did was because someone did hide them. And yet, sometimes those motives weren't good motives. I mean, and that was like a shock to me, it's like it was for money or it was for other reasons. It wasn't to be a good person. So you see these villainous things, but then you see these moments of quiet courage, big courage, quiet courage. I mean, it's just, yeah.
Yeah. And I think the daring comes out because, these people are being thrust into, we've got ordinary people. When you look at the stories of World War II, you've got ordinary people. You've got farmers and businessmen and teachers and people who just live quiet, ordinary lives. And suddenly they're thrust onto the stage of one of the most tumultuous times in history. And they have to be the soldiers and the pilots and the sailors and the Red Cross workers doing all these daring things and making these decisions of, when do I need to step up and be courageous? And when is it bold courage and when is it quiet courage? And a lot of ethical dilemmas too. So I think that's makes for great stories.
It does, and you see that with Wyatt, your character in The Sea Before Us, because he's wanting to protect everybody and having to make those decisions. And you do see that this is an ordinary man, like you said, thrust in this extraordinary situation. And when do you let your personal feelings be more important than the bigger mission, and when do you let the bigger mission be more important than your personal feelings? And that's a theme that's sort of running through this story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating. And then romance. Oh, go ahead. No.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I've had a lot of people say, there's nothing romantic about World War II. It's like, yes, that is true. However, there are so many great love stories that have come. I mean, it's a huge theme. Everything from, the couples kissing at Times Square, all these great photographs. But because people were thrust together from all over the nation, people were meeting people that they never would have met. Most people in America in 1941 were born and lived and died in their same small town.
Wow.
Very little migration. But the war causes great migration. First of all, men going to training camps and women going to training camps, but also people moving where the jobs were. I mean, Los Angeles was a nothing town before the war and boomed.
Really?
Actually, the whole West Coast. I live in California, so it's special interest to me. But Richmond, California, where all the shipyards were, it was nothing before the war. And so you had all these people that were coming to new parts of the country to get great jobs. And they're meeting people from all over the country.
Right.
And you're going overseas and you've got, soldiers from the South meeting nurses from England or from the North. And you have this mixing, and it's a wonderful time for romance because you're meeting fascinating new people.
That's true. And there's just these different cultures. I mean, because right away you've got a British culture and an American culture and the kind of clash and a little bit of rivalry there and a little bit, it's like, oh, you rebels. And
that was fun, right?
That's really fun. Yeah. I love what you said about California. I didn't know that bit. You probably didn't know. I lived in Florida when I was first starting to write World War II books. And my fascination began when I was just at my little hometown library and saw this book called Hitler's Soldiers in the Sunshine State. And I was like, what in the world? And it was about the Nazi or the POW camps here, which I had never heard of. And a lot of people still, I'll say, well, did you know? It's like, nope, they didn't even know. And that was like what triggered, my fascination. And then I just started reading more and more and more things and books and watching DVDs. It's just, yeah. And the same thing, this is where I was actually going. There was the Jacksonville base and then the soldiers would go there to train. And then after the war, many of them came back to live there. So that was part of what led to Florida's growth, early growth, was soldiers returning to where
California too, because San Diego, I mean, that there was, I'm blanking. I live right next door to it.
I know that.
Anyway, huge ship out place in Pittsburgh, California, and I'll as we hang up, but that's where most of the Army soldiers shipped out for the Pacific. And then San Diego, of course, huge naval base, San Francisco too. And so a lot of the men came out here and said, hey,
they like the weather. Yeah. It was really good. They liked it. And then air conditioning was invented, so that helped too. Otherwise, it might not have happened.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about your research because, again, you just have this reputation for impeccable research. And how do you hold it all in your head? And I see that in this book. I mean, because you've got names and places and names of ships, and you've got like targeting, and it's like you've actually got the numbers, like distances, and it's like, are those accurate? Are you making those up? And I knew, and I bet they're accurate. I'm sure they're accurate.
I actually found when I talk about the grid coordinates, those were accurate.
It's like, oh my goodness, how did you find that out?
I actually have the actual map they used.
Oh my God!
And it has all the locations with the grid coordinates. Like, oh my gosh, I'm just, nobody's going to know or care. But I thought, you know what? Why not use the real one if I have it?
Absolutely.
But no, I don't keep it all in my head. I take meticulous notes. I have a really good way of I organize my research, and so that I can find it quickly. And that I started doing that fairly early. So once I realized how much information I had, and even when I only had 10 or 15 research books, like, oh, where was it I read about the gloves? I'm trying to just like, where was it? And it would drive me crazy. It's like, stop doing this, Sarah. Find a way to organize it so that when I need to read about the gloves, I can find about the gloves. And so I just have a really good way of, I have a bibliography, and when I take my notes, I reference it to the book or the website that I'm using. And then I organize it by section. So, whether it's naval uniforms or naval customs or London or whatever topic it is, it's divided by category so that all I have to do is either flip. I have a hard binder where I take physical notes because I remember better with physical notes. But then I also have, I call them binders online with Evernote. But I organize it the same way so that I know all my information about naval uniforms. I can find out where it is either in my physical binder or on Evernote, and it's all under naval uniforms.
Oh, that's terrific. And that, you're talking like more than 10 years of research. So you're like a World War II expert.
No. The more I learn, the more I know how little I know.
Yeah,
but,
I totally get that.
I have the book I'm working on right now is number 565 in my bibliography. So, but I think I've learned I average about 50 references per novel. So.
Do you really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a bit. That's a lot. And is it mostly, you've pretty much stayed within the European theater. Have you written any books?
Not Pacific, no. My publishers said no. They said they just don't sell. They can't sell books set in the Pacific.
Really? Well, that's interesting. Yeah.
But maybe Pearl Harbor. They were even talking perhaps about that in the future. So they were kind of interested in that. So because I think Hawaii is really Pacific. I think what puts people off the war in the Pacific is just that it's. I personally think it reminds Americans too much of Vietnam. The jungle warfare, the close quarters. I think it's Americans kind of the war against the Nazis is just so clear. Good versus evil, and then when you bring in the war against Japan, you also have to deal with racism. And so, how do you write about that without writing racist? So, I don't know. Maybe in the future, but right now it's with Europe.
Not right now. Well, you flew in a B-17 Flying Fortress. What was that like? I mean, oh my gosh.
It was phenomenal. I had one of my readers actually had contacted me. He is a volunteer with the Experimental Aircraft Association.
Okay, so you have men readers.
I had men readers.
Yay!
My sons say it's because I blow things up.
Oh.
My oldest son is 25 and he says, I don't care if you have kissing as long as you blow things up. Like, okay, I got it. There's a certain ratio of explosions to kisses that I have to balance.
That's great. Well, congrats on that. Okay. So a guy reader.
Yeah, so he volunteers with the Experimental Aircraft Association, which is one of the organizations that flies one of the B-17s. So when they came to Concord, California, which is near me, he arranged for me to have a media flight. Those flights are over $400. And the funny thing was, that year is the year I finally decided my first 2 books had come out, had a contract. I just received my advance for my next contract. And I said, you know what? This is the year I'm going to treat myself. I want to do this. You know what? I can do it. And then he got me on this media flight. I got to go for free.
Yay.
So it was such a treat. And there was a B-17 pilot veteran on the flight and in his 90s and sharp as a tack.
Wow.
Like, putting him on the plane, I thought, oh, he's the cutest little thing. He's so frail. And then he started talking, and man, that man still could have led a squadron. He was just so authoritative and knowledgeable. And I know he could have gotten into that cockpit and flown that plane.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing. He was nothing cute or frail about him.
That's terrific. And we're losing so many of those stories, so as time goes by. So do you find that you start, with all the research that you're doing, are you just kind of inundated with story ideas, or do you still have to sort of seek out exactly what stories you want to tell? Or
I have to seek them out. I joke that God keeps me humble by only giving me one good idea a year. And I have so many friends who have so many ideas, and their hard problem is trying to narrow it down. And with me, it's like, okay, Lord, it's time to put together a proposal. I have nothing. You need to give me 3 ideas. You need to give them to me pretty darn soon.
And they have to tie together and
Yeah.
that whole bit. I appreciate that, because I'm kind of like that too. I'm not an idea machine, and it's a little bit annoying when other people can just sit around.
I worked on Where Treetops Glisten, which is a Christmas novella collection. I got to work with Tricia Goyer and Kara Putman. Those women generate ideas. Talking with them on the phone, they're like, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. They were flying everywhere. I'm like, okay, slow down.
I've actually heard that.
Yeah.
Before. Yeah, I know that. I've heard that about her. She has that reputation for just, I need to see if I can get her on here sometime.
Oh, they're amazing.
Yeah.
And they each write multiple books a year while working full-time and homeschooling.
I don't know how they do it.
I put my kids in public school.
I'm a slow writer. Are you too? I'm very slow, very exact.
One book a year for me, and I found that was right. I try to do it 9 months because my kids. I'm an empty nester now, but when they offered this to me, they said, let's try to put them out every 9 months. And I said, okay, because at that point, my oldest daughter was about ready to head off to college, and my youngest son was 16, just gotten his driver's license. So you get a lot more freedom when you're on your driver's license. I said, you know what? I reached a good point in my life. Let's try this. About a week later, my daughter said to me, my boyfriend and I decided that this is the year we want to get married. And my first thought was like, you can't. This is not a good year. She says, we are. And that whole experience taught me, it's like, yes, I could write a book in 9 months, but there was no margin for life. And, what if, a family member gets seriously ill, or you get injured, or a daughter gets married? It doesn't have to be bad things. Or move, something like that throws a kink in the works. I had no room in my life.
Yeah.
So I tried that, and it was a very difficult 2 years, and I realized, okay, that's it. For me. So, and I'm back to that for the Sunrise at Normandy series. I'm back to a book a year, and that works really well for me.
That's
so
good.
It flows well with my thought process. It gives me time to percolate the stories, to So.
Well, and with all that research too, I mean, if you're doing like 50 different resources per book, I mean, that's a lot of research. And you need time to digest that and take notes and all that kind of thing. Well, yeah, our time's about up. I don't want to, overstep time, but last thing I always ask, when you're done with the novel, type the end, it's ready to go off, what do you do to unwind?
It's funny because all these writers have all these wonderful, great routines they do and like ways to celebrate. I'm like, okay, yay! I turn around to my husband. I said, I finished the book, and he says, great. And I'm like, okay, what next? All right, I got a book. And I usually have a deadline. My deadline is almost always my release date. So
then you're going right into reading.
So like, okay, well, I got to get going with my publicity. So
that's what happens when it's every year instead of every 9 months, and it's not even staggered. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's that problem. That's a problem. But I once again, you get into the flow. But I'm getting to the point where I'll turn to my husband and say, "We're going out to dinner this week to celebrate." And he goes, "All right." He doesn't like spending money, so he's half Scottish. So
there you go. Okay, and I said that was my last question. I'm sorry, but I do have another question. Have you traveled to Scotland and England, like when you were preparing for this book, and
yes,
to do this
in Normandy?
Yeah, to Normandy too. Yeah, I wondered because I love, like, I will say this isn't too much of a spoiler. They do go to Scotland, and it just seems so real. I mean, so it's almost like, there's so much that you can write. Like, I think I did a pretty good job. Part of my World War II novel takes place in Rotterdam, and I actually had people from Holland telling me that, that I did a good job, and were surprised I hadn't been there. So that was like, oh, thank you, because you want to do justice to that.
But sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't. I mean,
yeah.
I had a series set in North Africa with the campaign in the Mediterranean, and that was during Arab Spring. I'm not going to Tunisia. I'm not going to Morocco, and I'm not going to Algeria. And so I just had to go by accounts and Google Maps and everything I could to make it sound realistic.
And then it's historical too, so it's not like, it's not like you can actually visit it at that time.
Exactly. So, but fortunately, a lot of the accounts that I read, the soldiers were very descriptive, because for them, it was such a foreign culture for them. They were describing it they were using a lot of the senses to describe it, the smells so I was able to get those in the story. But
that's really cool. But yeah, it does. I mean, I just really felt I guess she's been there.
But this one I had, thank goodness. So that was a treat. I try to visit when I can.
That's great.
Fortunately, my husband loves to travel, and though it was funny because we were able to go to Normandy and London on this trip, and the fun thing is for him is that I'm doing very man research, and we're going to military museums and gun emplacements and stuff like that. So he can really get into. He enjoys history and more history. So for him, I'm not dragging him to real fluffy places.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, thank you so much. I just appreciate you coming on and being with us and talking about your book. So this is, again, The Sea Before Us. It's the first book in the Sunrise. I want to make sure I get the little at Normandy, Sunrise at Normandy series. Second book coming out soon, and then we're going to have to wait a while for
February.
But it's great. It's great. I'm really enjoying it. I'm going to immediately sit down and finish it. So, Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And everybody, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Novelists Unwind. Bye-bye.